Hey, great people, thank you for joining us again. This is Foundation for Family Affairs, where we talk everything romance, intimacy, and family. I remain Chidi Akunna.
And I'm still Victor Akunna.
All right, so I have a question for you today.
Okay.
What would you say to a man who feels disrespected in his marriage?
Wow. What would I say to a man that feels disrespected? The first thing I'd like to say is that this is a very serious topic. And I feel many men that we talk to, this is the complaint you often hear.
Yeah.
I feel disrespected. My wife doesn't respect me. And some women will say, my husband doesn't respect me. So, but today we're looking at male perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, first thing I'd like to say is to the women, listen to your husband and try to find out what does he mean by disrespect.
I like that.
Because I come to see that people define words differently based on their own history, their own experiences, their own exposure, and the first time they heard the word. So what they mean by disrespect would definitely vary. So you need to find out, what does your husband define as disrespect? Why we say this is because sometimes we might be doing something that is normal to us based on our own background. Something your mom was doing that wasn't a problem for your dad, but it's a problem for your husband because you're not married to your dad. So sometimes your husband is complaining about something, he thinks it's disrespectful, but mentally speaking, you don't get it. Emotionally speaking, you don't get it. But you can see that this guy is really furious about it. So first thing first, try to get him to define what does he mean by disrespect. If he doesn't say much to you, you try to listen to say, when does this often happen? What does he complain about? So maybe because you take decisions without consulting him, that might be, if that's when he often says, you don't respect my views, that might be what he means by disrespect. So try to listen through when that complaint come up most of the time. And what were the surrounding activities, surrounding issues, you might begin to weave through to begin to understand. The other thing I like to say about disrespect is that we often define disrespect based on how we define our identity. I will explain what I mean.
Okay.
Sometimes if you pride yourself to be someone that is wise, that's how you've built your identity. You see yourself from the point of view of, I'm a wise person, I'm a finicky person, I'm a meticulous person. Whatever is your definition of your core definition of your identity. All right, I'm somebody who tells the truth. Whatever is, if someone does something that impacts on that core identity, the person can be seen as being disrespectful. So let's use an example.
Okay.
So if someone thinks the core of their identity is, I'm a wise person, and then they are trying to share something, you are dismissive of what they are sharing, they can see that as disrespectful because it will hit home. If someone sees themselves as someone who is perfect, who is infallible, and you criticize what they've done, they can see that as disrespectful because it's hitting at the core of their identity. All right, so we started by talking about you need to let your spouse, you need to understand how your spouse defines disrespect. Okay, having gotten that out of the way, the next thing we'd like to look at is first now to the man. One of the things I would like you to look at is what exactly are the key things that she does that you feel makes you feel disrespected? How do you feel? You need to reflect first, see, because sometimes some of these activities might not be what is disrespectful. It might be what these activities are reminding you of.
Awesome.
So sometimes it might be your own traumatic experience that these things are triggering. And so it might not be the activity of your wife, but what those activities remind you of. So for example, you were in a family where maybe because you are the middle child, nobody listens to you. They listen to the first child because he's the first. They listen to the last because he will be whining or she'll be whining through. You are in the middle, nobody really values your opinion. So you grew up feeling unseen. Nobody hears your view, nobody takes your view. People make decisions without consulting you. So you now have come into a marriage, and then your wife just does something innocently. And they charge at her like at you. Why you disrespect me? It's not exactly what she does. It's because there are traumatic experiences that don't be resolved. As it's not creating that trigger. So you need to be able to reflect, to be able to dig deep down to understand. So that you don't attack or back at the wrong tree. Or you understand the roots of that experience, that pain, so that you can address, because your wife cannot help you. You have to address those traumatic experiences. That way, you will not come with 1,000 watts to an issue that is just 1,001 watts. You see, so your wife did something that just 1 watt, you're coming 1,000 watt volts. Why? Because that activity is reminding you of all the other issues you've not addressed. So one, you want to reflect to know where is this coming from. 2, second thing I like to is to have conversations. All right, you don't know what you don't know. Your wife, I don't know how long you've been married for. It's the journey of understanding your partner is a journey. It's not a destination.
I love that.
So you have to give your spouse my wife used to call it grace, room for grace, to be able to say, you know what, she doesn't know where I'm coming from. She doesn't know why I react this way. Take time to enlighten her. Say, this is why this is painful for me in particular. It's because of this, it's because of this, and find the right moment, find the right energy, find the right time, not in the middle of an argument. It doesn't help. So where both of you are both relaxed and calm, have a conversation. Do you know, hon? This is why this is important for me. Explain why this is disrespectful for you. Explain. Many things are often clarified through intentional communication. Intentional communication. By intentional, I mean proactive, where you can say before the issue comes up, you address the possibilities you share. That's 2. Now, during those conversations, you need to create boundaries to say, give recommendations. You know, both of you should arrive at a conclusion how you're going to handle issues like this going forward. So, for example, the issue of not consulting you, if that is disrespectful, how are we going to do this going forward? Because it's always good to have a call to action when you discuss things like this. So everybody knows and you have a commitment. So not you just telling her this is what to do, this. No. Let it be a collaborative conclusion. Both of you are coming together to agree on this, how you're going to be doing going forward. The third or fourth thing I'm going to be recommending is, the husband should look at is, after you've done all this and the person seems to carry on doing it, it might be good for you to escalate issues. All right, escalating in this case is maybe seeing a third party, a professional, preferably a professional, that will have a conversation with both of you. Some people, third party may be someone that your spouse will listen to, that will further help them to explain, give them a perspective on an issue. That will help. All right, so I'll wrap this up by saying, or summarize my point by saying, for a man, the word disrespect or respect is it's core to the being of a man and of a woman as well. But in this case, we're looking at what should a man do when he feels disrespected.
Okay, I thought I would just ask a question because I found it really interesting that you said he would need to discuss with her, especially if it's things from the past. You know, talk about how whatever it was affected you. So what that shouts at me is that he must have the willingness to be vulnerable, right? But we also know that when some people, particularly men, feel disrespected, they may want to check out emotionally. They may want to lock up. Sometimes not intentionally, but as a way of, just protecting their heart, just to self-preserve, So in a case like that, you can agree that it would be difficult for a man who's checked out emotionally to bring himself to the point of wanting to be vulnerable. What do you have to say about that?
That's a very good question. I'll start by saying that men are humans as well. Humans mean we're all, our journeys are different. So some men have been trained and been taught on how to process negative emotions, maybe not negative emotions, unpleasant emotions. Okay. All right. Some men have been trained on how to talk through it. Some men have been trained to shut it down. All right. So some people say, you hear things like, why are you showing emotion? Be a man, be a man. What they're saying to you is that a man does not express the emotion. They bottle it up. That's why you have many men have anger issues. Why? Because when you keep bottling something up, it means it's not resolved. And emotions don't die. All right. You bury them. You have to find an outlet for an emotion. Otherwise, it's to find its own outlet. It's like water that is gushing. If you block it, it will find another outlet. If you keep blocking it, the more you block it, the more the pressure builds. Next output is going to gush out. You might not like how it's going to come out. So some men have been trained wrongly. So if you are one of those men, you need to now unlearn. Someone said the illiterate of the future will not be those who cannot read or write. To be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Don't be an illiterate, emotionally speaking. Unlearn, relearn. All right? It might be difficult. Now, if you are the wife of this man, give him grace. All right? Because sometimes the person who is having the issue does not even have the issue. All right? Because many of us have this image of perfection of ourselves, or we want to project that image. So when someone criticizes us, it hurts. So you want to deal with them with grace because it's a blind spot. So you know what? Let's talk to this. If you don't want to talk about it now, that's fine. You can come back and revisit it. You can gradually help him to come out of his shell, to discuss, especially if you are better in terms of communicating your emotions. Okay? Because sometimes men feel deeply, but they don't have the words to express how they feel. So if he doesn't have the words, can he write it? Can he share it? Can you find a way to keep helping him process? But you cannot feel intensely when he is feeling intensely. It's not going to be productive. So your tone has to be right. Your facial expression has to be right. And you cannot use what he's saying or how he's handling things against him. It's not going to be productive. Because sometimes people think when I criticize him, he'll feel the pain and then he will change. You can't change anybody. Yeah, you can't. So the other point that came to my mind, I would like to talk about was another suggestion for men is don't explain away bad behavior. Because sometimes some men will say, my wife, she's like this. When she's really upset, she can be very intense about how she puts across her points. That's a bad behavior. All right. So because he or she, where we're talking a lady in this case, will not express her point that way to somebody in a professional environment, before a judge, before a medical professional, a doctor. All right. So don't explain away a bad behavior because you are trying to broker peace. You're trying to not to have a friction. All right. Some frictions are good so that you can arrive to a place of peace. All right. If you have a temporary friction, so that both of you will come to that understanding of who you are. We call it in Tuckman model. As a man, he came up with a model called Tuckman model. He talked about the 5 stages of team building. All right, marriage is an example of a team.
That's right.
First one he said is forming, where people get to know each other. You are knowing each other. The next phase is called storming. it's an inevitable part of the process of evolving, where you push your point, she pushes her point, both of you, and then you come to say, okay, these are our boundaries, this is how we should do this. Then you now move to, from that, you now move to norming, where you begin to normalize situations, both of you now begin to get along, to now performing. You cannot skip that storming stage or avoid that storming stage. You will not come to a very good norming and performing stage. Okay, so don't shy away from temporary conflicts. Otherwise, you will not move to the norming stage and the performing stage.
That was phenomenal. I have more questions, but let's keep this one short. So, if you have comments or questions on this, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be happy to read from you. Please leave them in the comment section. And yes, we will not forget to invite you to subscribe to our channel.
Yes, that's why we're here.
Yes, but I think you did justice to that, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I would have loved you to talk more on, the last example you were talking about. Maybe to give an example for someone, because something was coming to mind as you were speaking, and I was just thinking, what if actually this person has tried? You're talking about the man to the lady. What if he has actually tried, it's not like it's not been called out before, probably privately and publicly, and he still carries on, and he still feels disrespected. So what?
That's why I said they have to escalate it to a professional
great.
or to someone that the wife will listen to. If after all this and it's still not resolved, he may have to remove himself from that environment.
If it's abusive.
If it's abusive. Because sometimes disrespect impacts your mental health. It can make a man want to shrink. Men thrive in an atmosphere of peace. So if a man finds himself in a situation where there is constant conflict, disagreement happens once in a while, but if it's regular and constant, the man's brain does not function in that atmosphere. Like fish cannot survive in water, men cannot consciously, prolonged period of time, survive in a conflict, toxic environment. So if it's like that, you might want to remove yourself temporarily from that situation again to try to seek redress.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, so we'll see you on the next one. It's goodbye from us.